Hello and welcome to Extra Minutes, the 60 Minutes podcast. I'm Amelia Adams and I'm here with producer Toni Ambrogetti. Hi, Toni.
Hi, how you going?
I'm really well. We're trying something a little bit different for our podcast. It's not really new for the program though. Many of you might remember that years ago, 60 Minutes would end every program with Peter Harvey's Mailbag. It was one of my favourite segments growing up.
From one Michael Hunter came this extraordinary tale of a scientist, his invention, and a spine-chilling conspiracy. He was eventually captured by the FBI or the CIA and forced into selling his design to NASA. This is just one of many cases of a scientist being silenced. Michael, he wasn't silenced. It's just that he and Elvis are both keeping their heads down. Believe me, they're just waiting until the time is right.
So with that as our inspiration, we're going to try a little modern take on Mailbag, sharing what people are saying about our stories online, the good and the bad. And there is a lot of bad. I generally try not to read the comments, so here we are. And of course, we can't share every comment. We get a lot of those, but we'll do our best to share a variety of them. One story that got a lot of reaction was our recent story on Tesla's self-driving technology, which rolled out a couple of months ago on Australian roads. And I think we always knew this was going to be a pretty divisive story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when you think about it, Tesla is owned by Elon Musk, and he also owns the social media platform X, formerly Twitter. So yeah, it generated a lot of discussion, especially on his platform.
It did, and we got his attention. I never expected that Elon Musk's mum, May Musk, would come out of the woodwork. But she did, and she tweeted us or posted on her X saying that in 2008, 60 Minutes, referring to the American program, did a hit piece on Elon and the Tesla Roadster, even adding car noises to the silent sports car. Since then, I realised this program cannot be trusted in any topics. I'm hoping Australians are smarter and don't believe the reporter who obviously had an agenda. So let me just say, I do not have an agenda.
I was going to check.
I'm a terrible driver. I need all the help I can get. And I was actually really excited to test drive the full self-driving supervised technology. So no agenda here. And I actually thought it was it's very cool technology. And it broadly makes good decisions until, as we discovered, something goes wrong.
Yeah, and you got to spend, a good solid half a day in the car.
Yes.
What did it feel like? Because I guess we heard and saw a lot of what happened, but what does it actually feel like to be in a car when someone's not driving?
So weird. Really counterintuitive. And when it first took off and my driver or supervisor, James Ward from Drive, had his hands off the wheel and his feet off the pedal and the car's turning, I was just thinking, you just want to grab the steering wheel.
And we are away.
It's going to take us there.
Indicators on and off we go.
That is a really weird feeling.
It's bananas.
And you can at any time, and that's a really important point to make, that, it's intended that you can override the technology. But as we took off, we pretty quickly came to a pedestrian crossing, and the car stopped, let pedestrians across and kept going. And then there was a roundabout, and I actually got used to it quite quickly.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's some of the comments that we got, was that during that test drive, which we used in the program, as I mentioned, we were with the car for, half a day or more because of filming. Did we go through, I guess, some of the comments that we've received from people are saying that we only picked the bad parts? That's not really how we went about it, is it?
It's really not. And, one of those comments I'll read out. The full version shows nearly 40 minutes of footage of positive, conservative and correct driving, showcasing this amazing advanced technology. But 60 Minutes Australia chooses to cherry pick. It airs the one little mistake. That is simply negative, bias, one-sided and gutter journalism. First of all, I've been called a lot worse. But no, that's not what we did. We, I think, showed quite a lot of our test drive, and we mostly, in fact, showed the car and the tech making the right decisions, which it mostly did. And, as this viewer clearly said, correct driving, positive, conservative driving. We picked, I think, a couple of points to really showcase, to highlight it. One was the car, as I mentioned, preempting pedestrians.
Yeah.
A win for the tech. The other was a bad decision. And it was a big fail, and it could have gone seriously wrong. As we were going along a freeway, the technology, took an off-ramp which actually had huge no entry signs.
Yes.
And went into a construction site. Now, roadwork changes in every city, particularly at the moment around Sydney with the Harbour Bridge. And I, for a moment, thought we were going down an off-ramp where cars were going to be coming up towards us. So I actually genuinely panicked.
That was a no entry sign.
That was a no entry sign. So we have come into where there is a construction zone.
Okay.
So I've taken over driving now, and we have made an error, and we're going to have to explain ourselves to the man in the high vis. There we go.
Keep going straight, it takes you back to the freeway.
Sorry.
We'll let the car make the decision next time. So thank you.
Thanks, mate.
So there
I
you
had
go.
a moment there where I thought there might be cars coming towards us when I saw those no entry signs.
Yeah,
I
it
have
was.
to say, my heart stopped a little.
So-
Luckily, that was not the case, and we were able to safely drive around.
Safely get out, yeah.
But I think we were quite fair in showing that, mostly the car made really safe decisions. And the whole point of our experts was it's all good until it's not.
Yeah, and I think really importantly, I think the interaction of full self-driving supervised cars and pedestrians is important. That's why we made the choice to show that one in particular, which was a good decision. But Tesla's also been really selling full self-driving supervised as its capabilities to be a city driving car.
Yes.
So not just those autopilot functions on the freeway, but that they can handle the city. And, in our experience, something that often happens in Sydney, if anyone's driven here, it is confusing. There is roadworks and things change. And that's, I guess, an important test for any car that wants to drive in the city or any driver. So, it was important for us to show how that handled that situation.
It really was. We also have had a lot of feedback around basically viewers saying, what's the point of this technology? I'd rather drive it myself. And I think this is a point James Ward from Drive made a few times in the story, which is like, this is amazing technology. No one's arguing with that. It's super cool. It usually makes really good conservative decisions, but I'd rather drive the car myself. Like, why do I need this? Because Tesla's so adamant that it is full self-driving supervised. So you must be like this, right? You must be able to be in control. Therefore, what is the point? If I can't put my lippy on or feed the kids breakfast in the back of the car, what am I gaining? What am I spending $10,000 for just to do this?
Yes. And I think, one of the key things in Australia is the distances that Australians have to drive. If the technology could reduce, the tiredness of a driver, which is one of our biggest, killers on the road.
Yeah.
But if you still have to be awake
Alert.
and supervising and ready to take over, it's perhaps not going to reduce, that kind of fatigue that might happen on one of those interstate drives, which is what, James from Drive did. He drove from Sydney to Melbourne and, you can't have a nap.
No.
To be very
right.
clear.
And he kind of said he got a bit bored and tired, but he also, to your point, had to remain alert. We have a comment here saying, a stepping stone for sure, but utterly pointless if you have to sit there babysitting. Another viewer says it's not self-driving if there needs to be a driver in control. So a lot of people, I think, picking up on something that we were asking ourselves, as we delved into this story.
Yeah, and it kind of comes down to, I guess, the thesis of our story is if it's called full self-driving, even supervised, what is the title and what does that title say to people and what's the reality and what's that gap in between the promises and the reality of the technology? And that's kind of what we explore.
Yeah, and I think that's, what we saw really go wrong in the United States, where, for years Elon Musk has been saying you can just get in the car and go anywhere and not have to do anything. And people have believed that.
So we got a few comments regarding one of the example cases in the US. So we highlighted a case from Florida that was finalised in 2025. And in that case, there was a fatal crash in Florida and the car was driving with autopilot technology from 2019. So we had comments like from Greg who said, this is now 6-year-old technology, but regardless, I'm controlling what my vehicle does. People saying, that enhanced autopilot isn't the full self-driving. So why did we include this case?
Well, it was a landmark ruling. For the very first time, Tesla, the car maker, was found partially liable for causing a fatal crash. It was hugely significant. It's changed the way they name their technology, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, that ruling happening in August 2025, that was before the technology launched into Australia. Right. And when it arrived here, it was called Full Self-Driving Supervised.
Yeah.
And, with the discussions that we had, trying to get Tesla's side of the story, they didn't want to come on camera, but they did emphasize that we needed to call it supervised, that it was critically important that we kept that supervised word in. And, those kind of, I guess, naming conventions, they come into place to make sure that, people know that the driver has to also be responsible, which is an outcome that came from this case as well.
And that was really important to the defendants. Dylan Angulo, who we spoke to, whose beautiful young girlfriend was killed in that crash, he had rejected a $60 million settlement from Tesla, which could have been done privately, kept out of the news. I mean, him and his girlfriend's family really, put themselves on the line to go public, not to get the big bucks, but to hold Tesla accountable and also to make those changes so that other people won't suffer the same grief. He said to me he felt like he was an experiment because Tesla's basically test driving, using their public roads as a test track.
Why was it so important for you to sue Tesla?
Like, I felt like this technology wasn't ready yet and that it failed. It killed Nibel and severely injured me. And I just felt like an experiment.
I think, Dylan's story and what happened to him and his girlfriend Nibel, it's not easy for him to talk about.
No.
It was a challenge. And in the interview when you asked him, why are you doing this? Why are you talking about this? Like, he said he wants to see change so that what's happened to him doesn't happen to other people.
And we should mention not only, has he lost his girlfriend, but he has a lifelong brain injury. He's in constant pain, constant rehab. And for him, that is a direct result of someone driving a Tesla, believing the car would do the work for them, and it didn't. The tech failed.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line, isn't it? We have a comment here from Rebecca saying, I think Australia should ban Tesla from being able to sell their vehicles until they can 100% guarantee their vehicles with self-driving is safe. Honestly, it's like their views on gun laws. These sorts of vehicles are a loaded bullet, a loaded gun, just waiting for someone to accidentally turn off the safety lock. Look, I think a loaded gun is a strong analogy. A lot of the mishaps that we're seeing are minor and probably easy to override it. But that viewer raises a good point. I mean, Tesla can probably never guarantee that the technology 100% works all of the time.
Yes.
Raising the question that we faced during the shooting of this story, which is, so is it safe?
Yeah.
Is it ready? And I don't think we know the answer to that.
We've had a number of comments about road conditions and how the Teslas react to that.
Yep.
So Enigma 591 wrote in, they said, I've seen a lot of videos of Teslas reacting to conditions on the road ahead. The main thing these videos have in common is that the car reacted much slower than what I would have in those situations. We discussed this and we looked at this, and it's maybe not software, but it's a combination of software and technology. And one of our experts actually spoke to that in the story, didn't they?
Yeah, Dr. Missy Cummings, who's the Director of Autonomy and Robotics at George Mason University in Virginia. And first of all, she said autonomous vehicles don't have a critical thought. They can't reason, they can't imagine, they mimic human driving. They don't mirror it, which I think is a really good thing to keep in mind. But she also explained that, Teslas rely only on cameras. So when you're talking about different road conditions, as that viewer was, potholes, rain, fog, whatever it might be, a big truck coming out, they have cameras on their cars which will detect those things and the car will behave accordingly. But what they don't have are LiDAR and radar, which other car manufacturers do use.
Yes. And I think it's, it's obviously a business choice to use one technology over the other. But our expert was saying, in her opinion, you should use all three to get as close as you can to human reaction.
Yeah.
Robots cannot operate in safety critical systems with just one sensor.
The cameras are trained to recognise obstacles that humans would avoid. What difficulties can they have?
Of the three sensors, LiDAR, radar, computer vision is the most unreliable of all of those sensors.
So I guess, time will tell, but one thing we know for sure in Australia is that our weather conditions impact our roads, and I don't think you could be a driver in Australia in the last couple of years without regularly seeing new potholes showing up on your road.
Truth? And, she also made a great point, which was, has this tech been trained to our conditions? The roads here are very different. The stop signs are very different. The systems are different. And I think, as you say, time is going to tell if the tech is up to scratch here. So we have a comment from Jerry Gong, 2012, saying, I feel it is pretty dangerous once the system can be hacked. What safety measures are applied? Good question. And we weren't able to go into every facet of this story as we did it. But it does raise a good point about the concerns over, data gathering and potentially spying.
Absolutely. I think that, Jerry's comment, there was quite a few people asking about cyber safety and things like that, and what happens with the data, because, these cameras are recording like the road, they're recording inside the car. But with the story length that we had, we couldn't get into all the issues. There's also people raising questions about insurance, third-party insurance in Australia, which is compulsory.
Yes.
How is that going to work if, you don't have someone necessarily driving anymore? But another question that perhaps we'll get into as these cars become more common.
That's right. And there's been so much litigation, so many lawsuits in the United States. And again, our expert, was predicting that we will start to see those lawsuits rolling in against drivers of Teslas and potentially even Tesla itself. Toni, thank you.
Thank you.
And if you'd like to leave a comment, feel free to do so. Otherwise, catch up on our story on the 60 Minutes YouTube channel or on 9 Now.